A very warm welcome to all of you to this wonderful panel where we're going to talk about women's voices in history, heritage, and conservation. And we have three amazing authors who have done phenomenal work in each of their fields. And we're going to talk to them to understand what have they done, how have they done, and how are they helping the world through their voices. Let's begin with a quick round of introduction. I am Dipankar Mukherjee, and I run Readomania Publishing based in India. And we've now completed 10 years of our existence, and we've been focusing on a lot of different kind of content. You should go to our website readomania.com to explore more. More on us later on. Let's move on to our speakers today, and we start with Sutapa. Sutapa Basu, as we all know, is a award-winning veteran author of more than 400 plus educational textbooks and more than 10 fictional books, including a few non-fiction. She has got shortlisted at multiple awards and also won the author awards for her book Nadir Shah. She has been a regular participant in all literature festivals across the country. For more, Shutapa, over to you.
Thank you, Dipankar. I think you said it all. But okay, I am an author, I'm an educationist and a writing coach. So, yes, I have written about 10 books. Out of them, four of them are historical narratives. I have one non-fiction, a few children's literature. I've translated Bengali heritage literature as well. And I'm on to more books. The more, the better. I have one of my books, which is The Curse of Nadir Shah, has won the Arthur Awards. And other books have been, like The Birth of My Nation, has been nominated for awards last year. And what is most delightful to me is that The Birth of My Nation has been prescribed by quite a few schools all over India as their supplementary readers. So it was wonderful to meet the young readers who have been reading the book and fielding their questions, which were very, very analytical and discerning. So that was a great thing for me. At the same time, I've also run Sutapa Studio, which coaches aspiring writers, faculty members of schools and children. And in fact, lately, the mentees of my Sutapa Studio have come out with their own book called Love Can Kill last year. I also run something called Bistro Bars, which are conversations with eminent people in the field who can tell us a lot about things we don't know. And I also have the Sutapa Basu Show, which is a podcast, which all of you are welcome to hear and listen to.
Thank you, Shitapa. That was a wonderful introduction, and there's so much more to be talking and discussing about her, but we'll come to that later on. Let's move on to Avanti now. Avanti Sopory has been and somebody who's, I would not say is an activist, but rather an author activist who takes up very seriously the cause of Kashmir. In fact, she is one of those authors. She brings out a brilliantly positive narrative on Kashmir about the time that was wonderful in Kashmir, the things that need to be preserved about Kashmir, and a lot more, which is a very, very interesting facet of how she talks about conservation and the relevance of conservation in setting our own history in the right place. More on that from Avanti.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. Thank you, Dipankar, for that lovely introduction. I'm Avanti. I have, my focus has always been to bring out a softer and a beautiful picture of Kashmir, which is beyond all the narrative that we keep listening to, and we've got so used to that. And whether it's the folktale book or the Kashmir that was, or my, this book on the ancient temples of Kashmir, my idea is to tell the world that please, look at Kashmir minus all the negative narratives that we've been listening to. And it's a joyful journey because while I do whatever work I do and, the researches that I do, there is so much that I have gained and learned in my journey and which I seriously want to share with the larger world. Besides an author, I'm also an educator and I'm also a trainer. So all of this together somewhere helped me churn my creative juices and bring out books. So my previous two books were fiction pieces, but this book on temples is a non-fiction piece with a little twist of fiction in it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Avanti. Moving on to Dr. Harshali Singh. Dr. Harshali Singh, as we all know, is a Consumer Forum member judge, and she is a brilliant fiction author of four books, as we say. Three of them belong to four solo books. Let me clarify. She has multiple anthologies to her credit. So four solo books, out of which three belong to a series that she is writing called Haveli series. More on that from her. And the last and final one, which is just released, is based on the life and times of Anarkali, a brilliant narrative. She's based on the character of Anarkali from a different perspective. More on that from Harshali. Over to you.
Hi everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure listening to all of you, and I feel very humbled that I'm part of this panel because I am sitting next to or with such stalwarts. To introduce myself, I don't know what to say besides the fact that I have a professional life and I have a creative life, and I think they merge beautifully, or they at least hit it off against each other. I write because it's very cathartic for me. I write because that's what I need to do to stay sane in this world that seems to have gone mad. And so all my books are, I think, they're fiction, but they also discuss the underbelly of society in a way that is palatable. And having won the Munshi Premchand Award and the Ashoka Award for my work in my professional field as well as my creative field, I think it just tells you that you're on the right path. And I just need to keep going on down this path. And I'm blessed to have people who support me in this endeavor that I've kind of taken up. 24 hours seem too less taken away, and there's so much I want to do, still on track. So I hope fun, and I think discussions like this just know that I am surrounded and my circle is right. So I'm just glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Let's not wait anymore and jump into the conversation. So, we're talking about women's voices over here, and talking about women voices who talk about important things and elements that matter. And today we're talking about heritage history and how do we talk about conservation around them. Okay, starting with you, Shatapa, the whole idea of heritage, the whole idea of using literature as a path and method to conserve heritage. What is your opinion? How have you and your voice added on to this particular aspect?
So most of my books have a history background. So even if I'm writing a thriller, which I have, there's always history or heritage behind it. So let's start with my first book, which was a psychological thriller. But I have showcased a lot of Manipur in it. A lot of things about Manipur, which I think very few people, even those who are tourists, don't know about. For example, the Loktak Lake, how that is like there are people staying on those bhumidas, as they're called, on the Loktak Lake, which are floating islands, basically. The other thing that was interesting about Manipur, which for me was a startling discovery, was I always believed that blue lotuses are mythical, but I saw them there, I mean, miles of canals full of blue lotuses. So whenever I'm writing my books, I try to take my reader to the ambience of the heritage that is a part of that book, very much a part of the book. So Padmavati, I had to do a lot of research to find out the kind of cuisine they ate, the kind of clothes they wore during that period. We all know what kind of typically regional costumes are worn by people in Rajasthan. But during that period, what kind of clothes were worn, what kind of ornaments were worn, what kind of weapons were used, I had to really research for that. And weapons brings me to Genghis Khan, the legend of Genghis Khan, where I again had to research into the Mongol culture. What are their traditions? What are their myths? And there is a very common a fallacy about Mongols, especially since it is Genghis Khan, that they are Islamic. They are not. They're not at all Islamic. So they worship nature. And I had to really find out a lot about it. And when I come to weapons, I'll give you one small thing about Mongols. I got to know that I'm talking about the 11th century, so they are hunters at that time, on the grasslands of Mongolia. And a part of their dress was a belt of knives. And those knives started from a large carving knife where there's to carve the animals which they had killed, to a tiny knife. And what do you think the tiny knife was for? It was for cutting tobacco, because they love to put it in their pipes and smoke it. So these were some very interesting things. And in fact, while I'm writing about history and about historical events or about historical figures, what really, really delights me are the discoveries I make about their culture and their heritage. And I definitely bring in those nuggets. And another example
Wonderful.
I'll give you is The Cursed Inheritance, which is set in Kolkata. So I tried my best to bring Kolkata alive for my readers, and young readers, because that's actually a young adult's book. So that people will want to come and visit the place, and know so many things about it while the story is going on. So I think that is the best way to preserve, or rather, I should say, that is the best way to offer heritage to young people.
Excellent. That's a wonderful note on which you're, bringing on presenting things to young people. Avanti, coming to you, arguably you would be one of the only female voices which is talking about conserving history and our architecture from the past for the generations going forward. How did the idea come to you, and what were the roadblocks? Did you see that there was a male bias because there have been very few female voices? So how did you bring up your voice, Avanti?
So yes, I agree. There were a lot of roadblocks. The primary roadblock was the accessibility, because traveling to Kashmir was still easy, but the fact that accessing those sites wasn't easy, because largely they weren't under any they weren't under any guided time. They weren't any caretakers, and they were locked. So sort of left to the nature. So getting inside, and then that was the first challenge. Then interacting with the locals, because I saw a lot of barrier in the conversations that they had, because whatever questions I probed was sort of not taken in an openness or in a very positive tone. So there was always this iffy that we don't want to speak or we don't want to talk. So there I had to make my work happen through other ways and other tools, and speak to many more people, because I could not just rely on one voice. That was one. And as you talk about the gender thing, that was a large roadblock for me, because seeing a woman alone in a deserted place, which even the authorities don't care for, why would they answer my questions? So I had to use my other means to get to them and get to, let them talk and tell me. Because, see, for the larger locals in Kashmir, the narrative is whatever these buildings, whatever these ancient monuments, temples, relics, everything, whatever that is, there's a standard statement that we get to know is these are, in Kashmiri, we say Pandav led. Led means house, Pandav means the Pandavas. So everything is Pandav led. So whether it was built by Vikramaditya, whether it was built by Avanti Varman, whether it was built by Utpala dynasty, Karkota, Kushana, Buddhist, whatever, everything is Pandav led. So you understand the seriousness and the gravity that our complete history, complete heritage. We've been talking about how beautifully Sutapa ma'am spoke about, and such a interesting information about Manipur or Mongols and so many other things. But look at this, the complete curtain on covering everything, not telling the reality, not telling the dynasties, the rulers, the kingdoms, the architecture, everything is covered there. So when they see a woman, asking about these things which they never want to even ever talk about, so you can imagine I had to juggle my way out through, carrot and stick and whatever ways I could do it. But it was tough, it was difficult. And not just that, I mean, there's so much information, so much of our manuscripts which were burnt. So there is no, I won't say there is no authoritative source or library or people talking, but large chunk of our books and manuscripts have been burned. So I may be saying it's come to me from 1,000 generations, it's come to me from 500 generations, but in the second century or in the 11th century, what happened to those books? Nobody knows. So, and typically in Srinagar, maybe for the rest of India, things are still accessible. For me, the largest roadblock was to reach there first and then start my, the investigation and the research. So it was tough there, but God was kind. Readomania was kind. So I have the book now.
Great. That's a wonderful thing. And this book is actually a treasure trove of information about a lot of heritage sites in Kashmir. More on that later on. Coming to you, Dr. Harshali. You've done this brilliant job of taking one enigma, so-called Anarkali, from one level and taking her life to completely different level and showcasing what could a damsel in distress be if you don't think of her like that. How did the idea come to you, and how did you go about researching about Anarkali when so little is known about her?
Yeah, I think I was lucky in that sense. I don't know, lucky, unlucky, I don't know, but I really had a huge and a very large playing field where I could put in, my thoughts and how I thought Anarkali would have been, in the gaps that were left from the facts that I could gather about Akbar and Salim. Now, what normally happened was, just to begin talking about Anarkali, I remember having this conversation with you, Dipankar, since you are my publisher, uh, that I found her very mystical, and the fact that how irritated or frustrated I was that she is only seen in the light of this woman who's on only thinking about portrayed movie, etc. Whilst I feel that they've done a brilliant job with Mughal Azam and all the others and the plays and the stories that have come out, I mean, this is a grouse I always had, that, she couldn't just have been this woman who was thinking about love, etc. I refuse to believe that. Maybe that's my age that's talking, I don't know. But so I remember having this conversation with you, and how you kind of propelled me to think about writing about her. And it was just one step at a time. I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to say. I didn't see a book that, oh, I'm going to write about Anarkali. I think it was just how they say that if you can see the next step, just take the next step. So that's what I did. I mean, I think it was just joining the dots. It was trying to find out, and the more I tried to locate her, just the fact that she was absent was, she became more conspicuous for me. Her absence made her more conspicuous for me. The fact that Akbar was uneducated, he couldn't read or write, how much influence Abul Fazl, who was the court or the royal chronicler, would have had on him. I mean, we see that even today in politics, that how people who may not have the limelight shining upon them have more influence on the rather than the person who's talking or who's propagating whatever they want to propagate. But it's the people on the sidelines who really are kind of pulling the strings. And so I think it was, in a way, trying to make sense of why this woman who, for all, intents, not one but two Mughal emperors, who were, who kind of changed the way we lived as a continent or as a kingdom. How could she just be a one-dimensional figure? How could she not have more to her? How could people not write about her, neither in the Akbar Nama nor in the Jahangir Nama? If these were the people who had been affected by her, how could not talk about her? So that the more I researched, the more I tried to read, tried to find, tried to talk to people. I spoke to a couple of people from, the Aligarh Muslim University, professors who teach Mughal history. And the sad part was that, I mean, they were very helpful in terms of what Akbar was doing or how he was living, what things were was like, and was Salim or Jahangir like, but they had in their mind she was just the concubine. She was supposed to just be pretty and dance, and that was just how much her life was worth, so to say, in people's mind in today's time. And so the fact that people would look at a certain woman and only see her as an object of entertainment really kind of got my goat, I think. And so I decided that I'm not going to let her be the Fars. Fars is the before the Queen came out in Shatranj. Fars is the is kind of the pre-Queen, you could say. And she couldn't move so much. She was restricted quite a lot. It was the Queen certainly has more opportunity to play more games now. And so I didn't want her to be that. I wanted her to have she would have taken decisions which may not have met with the approval of the court or people who had influence at that point of time. So these were the things that made me want to write about her in a way that I perceive her. That I don't think a girl who's been brought into the harem at 12, 13, without any backing, without anybody to support her, could have risen to a stage where she was sort of the favorite concubine. There would have been numerous beautiful women. We all know that they would get women from kingdoms which they had won. They would get them as gifts. They would have people bringing their daughters and the whoever women that to the king as as gifts, etc. So how could it be that this woman, who yes may have been really beautiful, that could not have been her whole soul, that could not have been her only claim to fame? And nobody likes a difficult woman, as they say, even today. So I think she would have been a difficult woman who would have had her own thoughts and intents and ambitions, and would have made choices which may have worked favor eventually. Though I feel that I wish that I could go to Lahore and kind of read up more about her if there is availability. But of course, one day maybe. But so far as Anarkali, I think that became a passion project. I think I just wanted to write about this woman as I would see her, as I would like a woman to be known. I wanted people to think beyond the love. I wanted people to think that she was a woman who would have taken that, that step of meeting Salim, later known as Jahangir, knowing that he was the son of her lover, Akbar. So even if she took that step to survive or to make herself closer to the center of power as she perceived it would be, once since he was the heir apparent, I don't fault her for it. I mean, those were times when women were second-class citizens. Women were under parda. They were left to their own devices if they didn't, if they couldn't survive. So it was a very difficult time. And if she took those decisions, I don't blame her. I think a woman will do what she needs to do to survive in today's world and as well as in that world. So I think I'm trying to find similarities in what was and what is. And I don't think they've changed that much.
Yeah. Very interesting that you put it that way, that, probably each one of us probably has an anarchy somewhere hidden within us where, you have a good side and a bad side, and you're always trying to combine the two to get the best out. Coming to you, Sutapa, on something very similar. In the recent past, we have seen a lot of women writers writing historical fiction, but you seem to have developed a particular nuance about writing battle scenes really well. Was that your way of getting back at men and saying, hey, look, we can do it better than you? Or was it something else that made you pick up battle scenes and do them so nicely?
So, very frankly, I didn't have a choice. I had to have those battle scenes because they were part of the legendary figures that I was writing about, whether it was Genghis Khan, whether it was the battle, Khalji did fought against Mewar or Chittorgarh, or it was the battle of my recent book, Parvati Bai, where a very famous battle, which is the Battle of Panipat, the Third Battle of Panipat, which everybody knows was the turning point of the history of India, which the Marathas lost. And there's been so much analysis about why they lost, because they should have not lost. They had everything in there going for them. And there have been so many theories about that maybe there was sedition, maybe there were spies who gave out the facts, because it's true that the Afghans who the Marathas were fighting, got to know a lot of their tactics. So how did that happen? So there's a lot of chronicles about that, and the battle scenes are very important. I think Parvati Bai has 3 chapters which are dedicated to the battle, because the battle had its stages and every stage was important. And so it starts off with the Marathas winning. How did the battle turn and why did it turn? Those are very important. And I really had to research that. I really had to read up about that. I had to read up about the kind of weapons that both sides used, and which was better, which was not, which was more tactical. What were the kind of guns that we used? How were those guns fired? They were huge guns. I mean, one cannot even imagine today the weight of those guns. They were, when they were pulled, when they were being moved, they had 6 pairs of bullocks which had to pull them. And even then it was difficult. So how were those guns fired? I mean, what was the recoil of that gun? Fortunately, I come from an army background, so there's a lot of talk about guns and so on in my own home. So I was very interested to know how were these guns fired, and therefore this, the weapon, the tactics, the strategy. Let's take Nadir Shah. He won the Battle of Karnal when he had a tiny force, and there was a huge Mughal army against it. So how did he do it? What were the tactics he used? Was it guerrilla? Was it some kind of deceit that he did? So those were important. Elephants were a very common, animal which was used in battle. Nadir Shah showed how they were terrible. They were a weak part of the Mughal army, because anybody sitting on the elephant was so easily targeted. So all these things are important. How did the Afghans use the zamburaks? They used them on the camel, and they were very mobile because the camel had to stand sideways, and the gun was placed on his hump, and he was the gunner who was to shoot, and then the camel would immediately move to another place. So exactly the kind of tactics that a lot of the military strategies use were used so long back. Let's take Genghis Khan, how he used to, pretend that he was retreating, and then he would come back at the enemy just when the enemy would think that they have won. So all these tactics are very important for the kind of life that I was trying to discover, for, to bring out the factual environment of the history that was there. So my battle scenes, I mean, I had to be very, very graphic about them.
I think that's a very interesting.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt, but I love the glee that's on her face, by the way. She's so gleeful talking about it. I like that.
Yeah. And now I'm going to put forward another controversial question to Avanti this time. See, Avanti, we all understand the importance of bringing out the right kind of heritage conservation narrative for all of us to take forward. But what is the benefit of having a unbiased opinion between the male and female gender? Does that gender have a role to play in the conservation narratives? And as an aside, would you believe that if this book was written by another person who was a male, would it be looked at differently or approached differently?
To tell you honestly, there is definitely a gender bias. But at the same time, I also firmly think that um, yes, women have had always the second fiddle always, but at the same time, I feel women have been equally forthcoming in bringing our history or bringing our stories to the generations we are now. See, look at a scenario in a household. who is the person who narrates folk tales and folk stories to the children in the house? It's largely the lady. It's largely the mother, the grandmother, the grand aunt, whoever. I mean, that's how I have seen it. So I feel that somewhere the times when there wasn't any script, when people couldn't write, we didn't have those printing machines, but women were the ones who were always talking stories. And life is about stories. It is, life is that huge katha saga that we all have grown up listening to. And in many ways, those are the stories through which they give us our learnings, the mother, the grandmother, the grand aunt, and they give the learnings to the children. So I believe that through those soft ways, women have been instrumental in preserving our history in some ways. Now, why I say yes, the bias exists, because we know it's an unfair world, and we know that if a woman is trying to be in the driving seat and wants to, do that, there will always be somebody, a male in the family, a male in the society, a man in the, in the circle, who will try to pull her back and try to say that, okay, this is right, she's done it, but I think the larger part, the support that was supposed to happen to this is the man. So the man sometimes takes the limelight. Having said that, if you're saying that this work was done by a man and by a woman, I I don't want to believe. I would not want to believe that. I would stick to the fact that it's written by a girl and it's going very well, and it's accepted very well. No man could have done a better job than this. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. So that was a
Yeah.
very politically straightforward answer. Very straightforward, so to say. Harshali, same question to you. If Anarkali was written by a man, how would she be?
Very frankly, I love able to
Can't hear Shali.
Harshali, I think you're breaking up over here.
oh,
No, I think you're breaking up.
coming back. Yeah.
Your voice is cracking up. Okay, we'll come back to Harshali once she has got her network sorted out. Sutapa, back to you. Quick question, a very short and sweet one. You've picked up different princesses to tell stories about. You've picked up Padmavati, you've picked up Parvati Bai. Okay, was there a particular reason you picked up these princesses for your stories?
Yes, there was. So my mission is to bring the voices of heroic women, women who have created history or tried to change history, to my readers, and whose voices are not heard. So let's take Padmavati. You mentioned her. All we know about Padmavati is the Johar. But who was she? Why did she do what she did? And what is her background? Basically, who is Padmavati? We really don't know. So I wanted to bring the real Padmavati to my readers. Parvati Bai. Parvati Bai was the wife of Sadashiv Rao Bhau, who was the commander of the Maratha forces. I just told you that there has been so much analysis about why the Marathas were defeated at that crucial battle of Panipat. The strange thing is, Parvati Bai was one of the few survivors of that battle and was a witness to the battle. Yet, nobody asked her, why is that? So I get this feeling when I go through my research and I look at the other voices, other female voices which are there in history. I get this very strong feeling that possibly these voices have been suppressed. And my mission is to bring out those voices. So, yes, I have a focal point, and the focus is bring those voices out of women who have tried their best to change history, create history, which was a very brave thing to do during the times that they were living, because it was such a society which was definitely did not allow women to act or do what they wanted to do.
Excellent. Coming to Avanti, you've done a very interesting thing with your book on heritage and history. While it's a non-fiction book, you've given it a touch of fiction. Why don't you elaborate about that?
So, this book is very central to my existence because I truly feel the absence. Of course, one can visit and go as a tourist, but as somebody who's spent 12 years of I'm born there and 12 years of my life there, and now there are many things which aren't accessible to me. Uh, Writing a non-fiction and straight away, taking the reader from one heritage site to another would have been a very dry thing to create as a writer. So I wanted a voice which wasn't just a central character in the story, in the book, but also my voice. So somewhere that character is representing me, is talking about my bhavs, my feelings, my emotions. And through him, I'm putting in all my questions, all my conversations, and all things that I feel are very important. Like uh, you know, of course, we all celebrate India, we celebrate the cultures, but I feel more than celebrating the culture, let's say the food, the very typical artistic things of India. I feel that it's important that we also largely and importantly focus on the real essence of India. The real essence of having some sense in this madness that we call India, some structure to this craziness that we live in. So, just a quick example, somebody in the family told me a couple of days back, so, why don't you get this done in the US? Some treatment done in the US, and you can get it done there. You have the best doctors or whatever. I said, you may have the best doctors, but this madness of India will heal the person anyways. So, being with your people, being in your environment, being in your ecosystem is a different deal. So, for me, Kashmir again isn't just about the namdas, the kangdis, the samavars, and the vazwans, and all of that. But there is a lot more. And through that character in the book, I've tried to somewhere put my voice and also hand hold the reader from point A to point B to point C. So that was the idea to bring the fiction piece
That's a
to.
wonderful innovation that you've done with the book. Hats off to you on that. Coming back to Harshali, are you ready to take on that question? What would have happened to Anarkali if a man would have written her?
I think we've. I don't think. Actually, let me not be politically correct. I like my Anarkali. I think I'm just going to stand by my Anarkali and say she. I don't think anybody could have done, you know, what Anarkali has become. I think my resilience and the fact that I wanted her to be a self-aware woman, someone who was maybe making unabashed choices which may not be right according to society, is 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 kind of bringing out the women that we are today. And we may face the consequences of that because we're still living in society. And I don't think any man could have envisioned it the way I have. I'm sure more people have written about Anarkali, will write about Anarkali later on, and men and women will do it. But but I think mine is the best. so, so yeah, I mean, if I don't love my Anarkali, who else will? She's
Who else
part of
will?
me. So I guess everybody's. It's something that anybody can write on. Um, but once you've read my Anarkali, I don't think you're going to like any other.
That's wonderful and that's
I'm being very
interesting.
candid about it.
Okay, quickly coming to all you ladies, one single question. Okay, over time, over the last few years, maybe 5 years, 7 years, have you witnessed a rise of women's voices in heritage, history, and conservation? I'll start with you, Sutapa.
Absolutely. I totally agree. We already have two ladies right here who are talking about conservation and another one talking about history. So, absolutely, I totally agree. And I also agree with what Avanti said. history or heritage are stories. And who can be a better storyteller than a lady?
Yeah.
I mean, I think we just have it in our essence to tell stories. And that's the reason I think women's voices are rising and are being heard. More importantly, are being heard and validated. Look at Arthur Awards, which is awards just for women writers. It's such a validation of the talent, the skill, and the dedication that women writers have for their work.
Avanti, what's your opinion?
I agree completely. There's a flood of stories. There's a flood of women. I see so many women around me and asking and inquiring about, where can I get this published? And my Mullah Ki Daud Masjid, it's only Dipankar I suggest to everybody.
No, but in terms of heritage conservation and history, do you see more women voices coming out?
Um, in my circle, I see a lot of interest for the subject, and I see a lot of people inquiring more about it. Perhaps because when we talk about my book, I see them wanting to know about their roots. So that's an interesting twist that the book has brought into my circle. Uh, with respect to whether they want to pursue it and do that further, maybe in some months from now, I see them writing another manuscript and it's coming your way.
Excellent. Good. I'm looking forward to it. Harshali, another very twisted question around the same thing. Do you think when uh, when men write history, they write it based on the facts and probably only facts, and when women write history, they bring in a layer of emotions which is seldom found in other forms? Is that a reality, or is that a figment of my imagination? What do you think about it?
I don't think so. I think, I mean, I can't deny that women are able to, multi-layer a book, which maybe most men can't. But I don't think we can generalize it like that. I think it's very personal. I think there are enough women authors who write very cut and dried and don't include any emotion in it or less emotion in it. Maybe they're trying to imitate a best-selling author, or they have been inspired by a man who's an author and they want to write like that. So I think it's a very personal I think it's their voice. Okay. And yes, women are more predisposed or prone to adding emotion because that's how we operate. I think that's how we initiate any conversation, and that is in our DNA, right? We can't cut that off ourselves. However, men, I don't think women, don't write on facts. I think they are equally, if you read any research papers or anything, it's very fact based. However, when it comes to creative writing, I think, as I said earlier, we initiate the writing with emotion, and we look at a situation and remember how we felt, and that is how we project it. For men, what I've seen is, in my reading as well, what I've seen is that they will look at the facts and they will project that first. The emotion comes later. So I think that could be the only difference of perception. But beyond that, I think it's a very personal choice. I've read men who write very well, who write emotion very well, and I've read women who write a very cut and dried kind of prose or poetry for that matter. So I mean, I maybe that is how I am exposed to reading. But I think, yeah, I think I like both. It depends on what you're reading. It depends on the genre you're reading. I don't want to read emotion if I'm reading thrillers. I want to know what's happening next. So it depends on what genre you are writing. I think a woman or a man will treat their writing, and that's how the book is sold, or the book becomes a favorite. For me, a book would become favorite because I am an emotional personal I would invest more in the book if I can relate to it, if I can relate to the characters, etc. But I know women who find all this very they don't like all the mushy stuff, etc. They don't like the emotion of it. They just want the what's happening, the event, and how is it solved, etc. So that's, I think it's just, again, I'm coming back to the same thing. It's very personal.
Can I say
Interesting. Okay,
something?
good.
Can I
Yeah.
say
Yeah, yeah.
something? So I believe that emotions are not gender biased at all, because at the end of the day, any good successful writer becomes successful when he takes his reader with him, when the reader starts identifying with the protagonist, or the protagonist's fall or successes or failures. Now, even when in a thriller, when you're creating suspense, that's an emotion. Am I right? If you're
Yes.
afraid for your protagonist and you're feeling, oh my God, what's going to happen next? That is also emotion. Emotion is not always romance and love and relationships. Everything is an emotion. Any feeling is an emotion. So even a male protagonist, a male writer, I'm sorry,
Author.
who's writing a thriller and creating that suspense step by step, is also dealing with the reader's emotions. So I don't think it's gender biased at all.
Very interesting perspective. Yes, Avanti.
Can I add
Yeah, absolutely.
to this interesting male gender conversation? I also feel that men do not in actual express themselves emotionally. I mean, like they are guarded. Women can still do that. So I feel most men authors find the book to be a method, to be a way in which they can express their emotions and speak their heart, because everybody wants to keep it all under covers. So this comes from the couple of books that I read recently, and one which I read very recently was this book by Makkar and Paranjape, Identity's Last Secret. So it's a very deep, intense book about mantras, yantras, and tantras. And there's a portion in the book where he's made up this dialogue between Bhairav and Bhairavi, like the Shiva and the Shakti. I mean, it just blew my mind. The dialogues of Bhairavi, the dialogues of Shakti, were like, maybe it's written by a woman. It can't be a man writing this piece. So the dialogues, the emotions were so intense. I mean, it got me to tears when I read the complete conversation. So I firmly think that men want to display their feelings through their writing and through whatever where they do not put up their face, show that face, and but on the paper they can write and express themselves. I feel so.
Very
Yeah.
But I
interesting
think
thought.
we have both these. We have a masculine energy and a feminine energy in any case.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
we
yes.
might try to push it down because that
Suppress.
doesn't. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because it doesn't help our. That's not the narrative we want to ascribe to. But I think we have both the energies within us, and I think when we write, we allow the one that we most
To be
that most
this
suits the
voice.
character.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that most it suits the book, the character, what we are building, because
What-
each book, I think each character takes away so much from an author or a writer that
Yeah.
to hold yourself back, I think eventually that shows in your work. When you hold yourself back, I mean, if I remember all the books that affected me or impacted me or inspired me, they were books that were written from a very real place. So I don't think you can kind of escape by saying, "Oh, I'll be just a fact writer and I'll be just an
Yeah.
emotional writer." I don't
Yes.
think that happens. I think it has to be an amalgam of the two.
Amalgamation of both. So that again brings us to the Adi Shak, the culmination of the man and the
Yes,
woman.
yes, yes.
That's what it is.
Absolutely. I think this is a wonderful conversation, but we're almost towards the end of the session, and we have just one last round of questions left. And let's change the model. Why don't you ask each other a question for a change? As a moderator, I've been asking many questions to all of you, right? So if I ask each one of you, what question do you have for the other? What would you ask? And let's start with Shutapa. What would you like to ask Harshali?
What I would like to ask Harshali is, what was her experience when she was writing Anarkali, which is, how much ever you say that there's a lot of mythical element to it, but it is history. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sure you had to do a lot of research. So how was it different from the Haveli series that you wrote, which were totally fictional?
Uh, so it was different in the sense, if I talk about the Haveli series, I was writing from a place of from wanting to explore the questions that I had about certain things in life. I think I write from that place of maybe anger, maybe questioning, maybe curiosity. That if I was put in such a situation, what would I do? Or what would I want that this should be done? So I think that is how I was writing. With Anarkali, that I think I was on the same track, but I had this was the plus actually, that I had facts that I could base the story on. It was more intriguing to have big facts to be placed, and then I could just kind of join the dots, as they say, and make a beautiful picture, the picture that I wanted to create. Because as we were discussing earlier, there's nothing written about her. So you have a huge landscape that you don't have to keep going back and forth and making sure that you're not going wrong with history, because obviously you can't mess around with facts. So I just took the facts that I found about Akbar, about Salim, about all the things that were chronicled about them, which could have had which could have had Anarkali during that time. For example, I'll just give you an example. That so we all know that Anarkali was is absent from any of the chronicles that are there. And Akbarnama it is not only written by Abu Fazl, it is written by several other independent chroniclers who have written about the coinage, or about how people used to live, or other things about the royal life, as well as about the life of the armed people, jisko kaha jata hai. So when you read the translations of that, which is very difficult, I couldn't read all of them, but whatever I could understand was that and then there are travelers accounts. So when you read about these travelers accounts, you realize that they were really not allowed into the harems. They were standing on the fringes, and whatever they could see or hear, or as we do today, investigative, you go and try and ask this person or that person, and that is what they were writing about. So William Finch was a traveler who came in, and he wrote about Anarkali it was like a postscript, that this woman was there who was then buried alive in the wall in the Lahore fort, etc. In 11 years after she had passed. So you realize that she was there at a particular place. So you have to base your story there. You can't have her in Fatehpur Sikri at that point of time. So that is how I built the story. Then there was another very interesting, which I then used in my story, that Akbar found, again, a traveler had written about this, the second traveler who came after Finch, that Akbar found this male. So it is a well-known fact that Akbar was very, very, hard on women parda. So he would not allow women to boys, even adolescent boys, or even his own children, to enter the harem after a certain age. So he was the only adult male who could walk into the harem and have his pick. Right. So there was a time when he found somebody in the harem, and he was about to strike him, but he saw the person's face and did not do that. And he let the person go. Right. Now, if I look at it from just the angle of the story, you feel, okay, that could have happened. But Akbar is a king. How can he let, when he's so stringent about having people walking in, or even his own children are not allowed in, how could he have let someone go? The person would have had to be very close to him, that he would have forgiven him. And that could only be the successor, that he wanted that person to be alive. And that is how, you kind of understand that it was someone really close, someone who was expected, that this person, and then you kind of join the dots of all the other things that are around on the fringes, and create this nice domed story that then you bring out in the form of a book. So yeah, I think that was where it was. And then there were there were these I talked, as I was telling you earlier, I spoke to these people who were history professors, etc. I visited the libraries. So whatever I could find, I could get my hands on, I could understand, because the language is a huge barrier, and everything is not translated. So whatever you can get your hands on, you try to read it. And then the more difficult part starts, that I remember speaking to you about it, that you have to kind of focus your energy on what you want to put in the book, or what you want to talk about, because there's so much, and so much intriguing stuff, that you kind of keep everything, okay, this is the next book, this is what's coming in the third one. And it's just never ending. So I think it's a rabbit hole that you fall into, and then there's no coming out of it, unless there is an email that says, when is the book coming, when is the manuscript coming to me, and then you go mad writing. So yeah, I think I had a great time. I think I enjoyed researching on this particular character. I can't say I didn't enjoy as much as I did earlier, but this was a very different experience, and I let loose. I traveled to Fatehpur Sikri. I went to Agra. So it was a very different, wholesome experience that maybe I'd like to kind of come back to it again.
Yeah, we'll
Thank you
discuss
for
that
that
again.
question.
What to do next? Now your turn, Harshali. What would you like to ask Avanti?
Avanti, tell me, when will we get to hear about the last Queen of Kashmir? I would love to see your take on the Queens of Kashmir, and what you feel about them as a woman. How is that coming about? Is that something you want to write about? Is that something that you'd even think about writing?
You just triggered it, actually. It
Yeah.
was a thing that was in my mind for a long time. But like,
Yeah.
as authors, we're always so full of ideas. Is maybe we want to write a book on this or this or this. So this is one of the things that I had in mind. But with the queens in Kashmir, it's interesting. Like you said, that you get into a rabbit hole. This book
Hmm.
on temples sort of changed my complete personality on many scales, on many levels. But while I was reading, researching, checking with professors, and visiting libraries and universities, uh, one thing was leading to another, and through so many sources I was getting to know so much about the queens of
Yeah.
Kashmir. Like the last queen was Kota Rani, we had
Hmm.
Suyamati, we had Yashomati. So
Yeah.
Yashomati comes from the Yadav, the Krishna dynasty, and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. And there was this one queen. She was so she was so administratively strong, and
Hmm.
did not leave her throne for the longest time, and she had
Yeah.
such clever ways to you know check. And not just that, she had got all the men in the kingdom, the possible heirs to the throne, killed, because she wanted to stick to the to the throne for the longest time. And at one point she really thought, now there is nobody after me, I've killed everybody, how do I, who's the next king or the queen for the kingdom? And then again she cooks up this clever way of choosing the brightest, cleverest king to the throne. So that's in my mind, because these characters, these strange personalities, are in some ways making me wonder, how did they have such a strong personality at a time when women weren't how we see them now?
Yeah.
Possibly, maybe because at that time, maybe in the 8th century, the 9th century, the 10th century, because that's when the downfall happened, and the last queen was got married into this Ladakhi invader who came, and there's a whole story about that. But despite all that, they were still standing on and sticking to their guns, and nobody could ever dare to say anything. So these characters, maybe because as a society, women were very modern and forward in Kashmir. Maybe women were very progressive in their thoughts. Perhaps they could continue to be strong at the throne and strong as administrators, and also have a voice. Even as queens, they had a voice, and they could put their thoughts, exchange their opinions with the king. But yeah, maybe it's in my
I
mind.
think
So
I think the research is almost there. Yeah, Dipankar, are you
the
listening?
research is
But yeah,
I have a
I
longer
think
list
that
to
was,
discuss with Avanti.
yeah. No, you have lots to discuss with Avanti, and I'm really looking forward to it. This is one of the books I wanted to I wanted to tell Avanti to do, because I think it's high time that we, as we were discussing, you'd asked the question earlier also that that why are women's voices so out there right now. I think it's to do with exposure. I think it's to do with economics. The fact that we are able to source information easily, I think that has really helped.
Okay, Avanti, your turn. What would you like to ask Sutapa?
There's so many questions. It's difficult to pin on one. But because you've been writing a lot on history and our mythology in some parts, I've always been curious to know, whenever you choose any information, any research data, how do you one define that, okay, this is what I should be picking, and this is authentic, this source is authentic, or this voice is authentic? That's one. And the second question I have is, often myth and history get overlapped. So how do you choose what is correct? What is it that you would want the authors to know? I mean, sorry, the readers to.
Avanti is acted like a true journalist. Given a chance to ask one question, she's filtered in another
Just
one. So
You
question
don't
number
get
two
two
also has
options.
been
Like, so
factored.
at this time, I need to get. She's written so much. So this is too little to ask, and too less a time to even start the
Yeah.
conversation with her.
So
Over
your
to you,
first
Sutapa. Yeah.
question, which is how do I basically how do I research and how do I decide that this is an authentic source? So I have to go to many sources, multiple sources. And when I go to these multiple sources, my research is on a particular person or a particular event. So what I will do is I will compare all that the sources have said, and I will obviously pick out what everybody is saying. I will not pick out the source, any fact that is a little different from what the others are saying. Because one thing that I'm very clear about is I am not going to change history. I'm not going to change any fact. And I'm not going to in any way sort of twist a fact. So I need my facts first. So that is what I do is I go to multiple sources, and those multiple sources could be books, could be documents, could be blogs, could be PDFs that I have downloaded, talk to people, go to libraries, watch films. Genghis Khan, I watched a beautiful documentary. So I will pick up only that fact which is common from all sources. That's one thing. Now, you said that how do I would like to correct you on one thing. I have not written anything on mythology as yet. So it's always been history. So how do I differentiate? You say, where does myth end and history start?
Yeah.
So if you ever look at, if you take facts, you must have done that for any of your temples. You will always find, if you put it in a linear pattern, you will always find that there are gaps, because at the end of the day, history is an interpretation of evidence. So wherever there is no evidence, the historian has nothing to say. So what I do is I weave my narrative. I will not always call it a fiction because it's actually a narrative. I interpret the facts to think that this is probably how it could have happened, and use those gaps to weave my narrative. But I will not change any of the facts, any of the historical facts. So I will not use the word myth because no, there's I don't think there's really any myth when it comes to history. But like I'll give you a small thing like for example, Nader Shah. He used to use red. Everything, he was very fond of red. He had red tents. His soldiers always had red in their uniform. He himself used to wear red robes. Now, there is a speculation about why. I could not find the reason. But apparently, all the Shahs of Iran, whenever they would hand out a death sentence, they would always wear red in the court. So somehow red was always associated with handing out a death sentence to the culprit. So I just speculated, it is speculation, that Nader Shah wore death to give a message out to all the people that I can anytime order your death. So just be careful. So it was like a warning that went out. So that, you have to do, because after all, those figures or the events are not there in front of you. There is no witness whom you can talk to as to actually what happened. So you have to take the evidence, the historical facts, and you have to speculate and then narrate it. Because at the end of the day, my readers want a story. They don't want a history book.
History book, that's true.
I try to create the story from those historical evidences or historical facts.
That's true. Yeah.
So can we ask you a question now, Dipankar?
Can we ask you a
Yes,
question?
that's a more
Turn the
accurate
tables
way.
on turn the tables on
Yes, you
you.
can.
Chalo,
Yes,
मैं
you
पूछती
can.
हूँ. Then I'll ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I see myself 5 years older and wiser.
That
No,
is
no,
very
that's too safer
No,
answer.
you asked a question, I can't give an answer. But yeah, so honestly, I see Readomania growing into a much larger organization. We are already doing about 50 plus books a year. We would target 100 plus books a year. We've now got, we're launching our children's kids imprint rather, Redo Kids. We have a lot more intention to go international. So yeah, lots of plans happening for next 5 years.
Wonderful. Looking forward. I hope we have many conversations like these.
Are you,
Absolutely, absolutely.
are you also planning international translations?
Yes, we are. We are looking at, like every other publishing house, we're going to open up a portfolio for international markets where we will offer our portfolio to them and try and explore their portfolio for the Indian market. Whatever is left of that, not yet being brought into the market.
Great.
So, European languages, South American languages, we're exploring.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
nice.
Look forward to it.
Great, absolutely. And ladies, it was lovely talking to all of you on heritage, history, and conservation. You guys have done really interesting work, and I'm sure all the viewers have had a good time listening to all of you. Thank you, Sutapa. Thank you, Avanti. Thank you, Harshali, for being with us on the show. It was lovely being your host. And Ananke and Sabin, you've been a wonderful platform for all women voices lately. And year after year, this platform has been growing. So thank you for giving all of us a chance to bring out our voices. And may the force be with you for Ananke. Thank you
More
so
power
much.
to you, Ananke
Thank you
and
so much.
Sabin. We're
Thank
really
you,
happy to be here.
and Dipankar. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananke. Thank you.
Bye. Bye bye.